Welcome to the next episode of the Professional Evil Fundamentals. I'm Kevin Johnson, and this is the last OWASP Top 10 video. We're at number 10, Insufficient Logging and Monitoring. Now, that's a pretty broad category, right? And you may wonder, why, Kevin, do you have the proxy server architecture slide from PEWAPT 101? Well, it really is just a model to try to drive home the idea that logs are everywhere. And there's lots of pieces that make up an application, even though proxy servers from a reverse proxy are not as common anymore. Kind of, right? With CDNs and stuff like that. When we look at applications, there's lots of places that logging happens. And the question is, are you logging enough? And are you monitoring it correctly? Do you have your thresholds for alerting set up correctly? Right? And this is one of those big questions that a lot of people struggle with. And when I look at applications, what I find for me, when as a consultant I come in to evaluate an organization's systems, one of the things that I always say to them is, hey, take your most critical application, figure out a sensitive transaction in the process, and see if you can track that transaction from initiation all the way to completion, right? So if, let's say you're an e-commerce site, pick a transaction, a real transaction, right? And say, can you find Denise's order from March 2nd, 2020 at 6:50 in the evening, right? Can you do it? Can you look at the CDN? Can you look at the application server? Can you look at the web server? Can you look at the data store? Can you look at any other back-end systems and track that transaction all the way from initiation to completion? This is different than a lot of people try. A lot of people will say, hey, let's figure out, maybe there's a SQL injection attack, and could you figure out what happened? The reason I like to use a real transaction is because if you can follow a real transaction through a system, a transaction that actually happened, and that transaction that actually ran through your application, if you can track that all the way back, then it is more likely that if you have an incident, you'd be able to figure out what happened. Then you've still got to attack and figure out the thresholds for monitoring, right? Do you know if you had a ton of login attempts? Do you know if you had a ton of successful logins, right? Things like that. OWASP has a great guide on logging and monitoring and what should be logged and how you should do it and how you should protect against logging sensitive stuff. I recommend that you check it out. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this video. We look forward to your feedback and your comments. And as always, you can reach us via the email address training@securideas.com. Thank you.